Lost in Tonight by We Had a Bonding Moment. Saiki wasn't sure how it all began. All he knew was that he didn't mind it, didn't mind him, and not minding someone was a first for him. Or maybe he did know how it began. Maybe he just didn't want to put a date to it, because whatever this was, Saiki wanted it to last forever. Satou Hiroshi, the god of normalcy, he was the epitome of balance, looking unremarkably indifferent. Most people were like riding a roller coaster you wanted to be no part of. Satou was refreshingly calm, like beams of the morning sun filtering through a tree. Saiki had attempted to befriend him once before, but Satou had chosen not to approach him. Saiki couldn't blame him for that. After all, it was the normal thing to do. Instead, he decided to lay low and just spend his free time observing the boy while being amazed by his everyday blandness. That was until someone else got involved. Saiki made no secret of liking the boy. Toritsuka and Ayura knew of his fascination with him, as much as they didn't understand it. Nendo and Kaido had witnessed it too, although they had likely forgotten it by now. The other two psychics had followed him around a couple of times until declaring it to be boring. Toritsuka had even called Saiki a stalker, only to chat about having found out a girl's upcoming birthday. Saiki felt bad for the poor soul, so he had decided to passively assist her in this typical fashion. Only that this time, the girl ended up realizing that he'd helped her and thanked him with an invitation to come to a cafe with her. She would pay for him to show her gratitude. Saiki would have declined, but the opportunity to receive free sweets was too delicious to pass up on. He had made sure to check her thoughts, and there was no romantic intention behind her words. Thus he accepted gladly. Now there he was, waiting in front of the school. She came up to him and smiled. "Hello, Saiki-kun," she yelled out, and he replied with a nod. He hadn't bothered to remember her name. What was it again? A memory of Toritsuka's voice filled his head. "Oh, Shi-chan. She's adorable, isn't she? She gives off the girl next door vibe. A perfect addition to my He hadn't gotten further because Saiki had slapped him. Right, Suzuki Shigure. An incredibly common name, really. It was no wonder he forgot it. "Sorry for the wait. I was talking to a friend who asked if he could join us. Is it alright if Hiroshi-kun comes with us?" she asked while jerking her head in Satou's direction. Saiki froze. Was she serious? Satou-kun was her friend, and he wanted to join them. In all fairness, he should have expected it. The name Shigure was for girls what Hiroshi was for guys. A common, bland name he was so used to hearing that he hadn't questioned it. Suzuki was the second most common last name in Japan, only behind Satou himself. Really, it had been obvious that those two would be friends. Now he just had to act cool. "Alright," he telepathically sent to their heads, and they began to walk to the cafe. On their way, Satou-kun and Suzuki-san were discussing Kaguya-sama Love is War 2, a movie starring Kana Hashimoto that had recently come out, and the latest Jump magazine. Saiki relished in the normalcy. With Kaido, Nendo, and Kubayasu, their conversations were always weird, if not entirely repelling. "And Saiki-kun, what are your favorite manga?" Suzuki-san asked him while flashing a shy smile. "I like Silent Cyborg," he answered. That alone was not a satisfying answer, though. Seasai wasn't exactly well known, even if those who read it generally enjoyed it. Jujutsu Kaisen is likable too. "Oh, I love Jujutsu Kaisen," Satou exclaimed. "I also love Boku no Hero Academia. I always wondered what it would be like to live in a world with spirits or supernatural elements. Wouldn't it be amazing?" He laughed, and Saiki's heart skipped the smallest beat. "Me too," Suzuki-san agreed enthusiastically. "If you guys had a superpower, what would it be? I bet I would have a cool one, like growing plants or talking to my pet dog. I swear sometimes it feels as if he understands me." Saiki suppressed a snort. Talking to animals wasn't all that fun. He would know. "Look at that doggo, for example." Suzuki-san pointed to a cute Yorkshire Terrier who was being carried by an older lady. "She is for sure thinking about how nice her owner is and how much she loves being cared for." What the dog actually said was a lot closer to, "Let me down, you pest. I came here to walk, not to be carried, you ungrateful hag. I knew I should have run away when I had the chance." "Such a good princess. All excited for mummy to show you the world." The woman cooed, and the dog barked louder. "I am a man. I expect to be treated that way. I would kill you if I wanted to." "Aw, my cute little baby. Do you want a new bow? Is that what it is? We can buy you a pink one this time." Saiki faded out the noise and just pretended to agree with Suzuki-san's deduction skills, or lack thereof. I would want to fly, Satou-kun answered Suzuki-san's previous question. Perfectly normal, Saiki affirmed internally. It would be so amazing to see the world from above. Imagine the many little lights while flying over Tokyo during the sunset. Sato sounded downright amazed, and Saiki felt the urge to tell him that he could, in fact, make his dream a reality. It would almost be worth it, just to see his smile like that. Not that it would work out as he wanted it to. Everything would be dirty, and it would be terribly cold. He would only destroy Sato's dreams. Saiki had never dreamed of anything. All he wanted he had, but sometimes he longed to feel the desire, something worth yearning for. Dreams were preciously sacred. His life was a graveyard robbed of crumbling hopes that he was denied. Sato deserved a better fate. After arriving at the cafe, Saiki ordered coffee jelly, because of course he did. How could he not? The sweet aroma created a perfectly delicious treat. Oh, I've never seen Saiki blush before. He seemed so happy. I'm glad that I joined him in Shigure. If it's that good, I have to try it sometime. Sato-kun's thought made Saiki freeze for a split second. The boy himself had only ordered a piece of cake, and Saiki felt sorry that Sato had never had the pleasantry of trying coffee jelly. He wanted to offer him some, but that would be weird. Saiki shook his head with narrowed brows. Why would he even think of such things? Sharing his coffee jelly? No, that was truly ridiculous. Saiki was disturbed enough by this treacherous thought that he decided to stop partaking in the conversation for a while. He also attempted to tune Sato out as well as he could. Suzuki-san chattered away happily, likely not even noticing his sudden silence. Sato did, but Saiki wouldn't know. A week later, Saiki was watching Sato during sports practice. Seeing as he was still unsure about the incident, he had even mentioned it to Toritsuka, who had replied, "Saiki-san, you want to give him your favorite treat to him. Maybe you want him as a dessert instead." Saiki had kicked him in the balls. It had felt very satisfying. Now both of their classes were having a softball tournament. Saiki would never understand the joy in these things, and immediately made up an excuse about having a stomachache. Originally, Saiko had refused to join as well, but Haido had yelled at him until he participated. Saiki had hoped for a calm noon. The gods, however, never played in Saiki's favour, so he found himself next to the one and only Teruhashi Kokomi. Normally, she wouldn't have been there, seeing as the boys and girls had separate sports classes, but Teruhashi did what she wanted to, and had, for some reason, decided to join. "Where are you looking at?" said Girl asked him while flashing a sweet smile. "Saiki isn't paying attention to the game at all. He must be so shy, sitting next to me. You get this chance once in a lifetime. No wonder he's looking away. Oh, poor boy. Let me help him out." Saiki groaned internally. What would be more harmful, letting her believe in her assumptions or correcting them and making her possibly ask questions? He decided on the latter. "I was just looking over there." Saiki nodded in the boy's direction. Sato-kun had just been hit by Haido's ball and was now out of the game until he could get someone in again. He was currently the only one to be out of the game, so Sato-kun stood a little aloof from the others. Teruhashi noticed this as well. "Huh? At him? What was that guy's name again? Hitoshi? No, Hiroshi, I think. Hiroshi Sato, that's the one. Oh, I really have to pull myself together. I need to know everyone's name. He's even in our year. Wait, why was Saiki looking at him of all people when he's sitting next to a walking goddess? The only people who ignore my presence are girls, maybe gay guys, and even then only some of those. Am I not pretty enough for him? What do I have to change? Wait, maybe Saiki is... Oh, could Saiki possibly be... Oh no, be gay? What had he done to upset the gods? Teruhashi's eyes widened as she mentally went through each of their encounters and realized that Saiki had never shown any particular interest in any girl. Saiki sighed. He had never shown any interest in any boy, either, but Teruhashi just ignored that part. "Saiki-kun, you should have told me!" she yelled excitedly. "We could have talked about boys together. Oh, we have to go shopping. Your style isn't very great and guys are visual, right? How are you going to find a boyfriend otherwise?" Saiki had created a monster. He was mildly annoyed at Teruhashi's stereotyping him, but other than that, he was handling it surprisingly well. He would have guessed her to be upset at him not being into her. Then again, the reason for her crush on him was solely his indifference towards her looks. He was a challenge she wanted to win, the one obstacle in her way to ultimate perfection. Him being gay erased that issue. Yeah, maybe it was better not to correct her. It would only complicate things further. But why'd you like Satou-kun of all people? I wasn't aware you knew each other. That it was. Saiki sighed. Why did everyone think he liked Sato? He did like him, but he didn't want to kiss him. That was just gross. He wanted to be friends, but essentially, it was for a similar reason for Teruhashi's feelings towards him. Oh, it's sad that Saiki won't ever love me now, but somehow I'm not that upset. Shouldn't I be sad? Maybe Saiki and I just weren't meant to be. After all, I'm the perfect pretty girl. I exist for everyone. God probably doesn't want me to have a boyfriend yet. If I did, people would start a war. It's so difficult, carrying all that responsibility. Teruhashi went on about something Saiki didn't bother listening to, and noted happily that Sato got back in the game. He secretly manipulated the game, in order to let Sato kick someone out who would have dodged the ball otherwise. Seeing Sato smile was worth it. I've never seen you smile at someone before, you know, Teruhashi said, and Saiki scoffed on the inside. He hadn't smiled. That must have been her imagination. Teruhashi was still looking at him, her usually so round eyes squinting. I could help you out, Saiki-kun. If you're too shy to talk to him, I could invite both of you somewhere, and we could all meet together. I'm sure he would say yes. Oh no, what if he falls in love with me instead? Poor Saiki-kun. I couldn't let that happen to him. I cannot even show myself to Sato-kun from now on, or he might catch feelings. He must forget my existence to give Saiki a chance. If it doesn't work, it might all be my fault. Sometimes Teruhashi's narcissism was strangely endearing. Saiki made a non-committal noise and continued watching the game. His class had way too many strange people. Even Sato couldn't cause an average ending. They were going to lose. Saiki briefly considered helping him again, but that would raise Sato's likability score too much. It was already at 53 due to his previous help. After the game, Saiki was enthusiastically greeted by Kaido and Nendo. Kaido told him all about the game as if Saiki hadn't watched it and explained how the team would have lost without him. But oh so graciously, the jet black wing decided to save the day and win the game. Not by hiding behind Nendo, of course. Teruhashi greeted them and got to Ofu in return. They walked to the changing rooms and Teruhashi mentioned that she would be going to the bathroom, seeing as she didn't wear gym clothes. Saiki didn't need to change either, and just waited in front of the building. Nendo had invited them for ramen once again, and Saiki didn't have an excuse not to go. A few of the students had already left when someone tapped Saiki on the shoulders. He had been listening to one OK Rock, thus not expecting the touch. He was startled and turned around to face Satou Hiroshi. Oh right, he had been a part of the game. Saiki removed the earbuds and paused the music. Oh, is that the beginning? Satou-kun asked excitedly. Apparently Saiki had turned up the music far too loud. He nodded, even if the question didn't need an answer. Sato was the one who had made Saiki listen to the band. After finding out that he liked it, Saiki had tried a few songs and discovered it to be strangely calming. Anyways, the boy continued, and lifted his arm to scratch the back of his neck. It was pretty cool to hang out with you. Do you want to meet up again sometime? My treat, of course. Saiki was unsure how to reply and settled on a thumbs up. Sato grinned. Amazing. Could I have your phone number or something? It might be easier to plan out our meeting that way. Saiki was not going to lie to himself. He was somewhat overwhelmed. Sato was a kind person, he decided. He had known that before, but being generally nice and being nice to Saiki felt different. He took Sato's phone and pulled out his own. It took him embarrassingly long to figure out where he found his number. It was not as if he had ever given it out before. Usually, people just took his phone and saved their number without his consent at some point. After having saved it on Sato's phone, he gave it back. Cool, I'll text you when I get home, Sato stated and waved in goodbye. After he disappeared, Teruhashi cleared her throat. He had telepathically seen her coming and hiding as soon as she had spotted the two of them. Saiki-kun, that's so great! I'll make sure that you two end up together, don't you worry. But worry he did. Teruhashi interfering would be quite bothersome, as pure as her intentions were. Today they were going to meet again. Sato had texted him immediately after arriving at his home, and they had decided to meet on the weekend. Satou had mentioned that there was a cool cafe he had been wanting to check out. It was a little further away, which was fine with Saiki. Getting there via train was going to take a while, but Saiki could just listen to music. Saiki arrived at the train station 15 minutes early. He was unreasonably nervous. After all, he was just meeting a friend. Not even that. Saiki doubted that Satou considered them to be friends already. Satou appeared 5 minutes early, an ordinary time to arrive, and eventually the train arrived. Saiki wondered whether Suzuki had gotten sick or couldn't join them for another reason. He had expected her to come. Satou didn't seem surprised though. Maybe she had told him that she won't be able to come. After the train reached their stop, they got out. It was raining a bit, but Satou had bought an umbrella which he offered to share. "I'm sorry," he apologized. Saiki wasn't sure why he felt the need to do that. "I knew it was going to rain and forgot to inform you." "Why did you want to come when it was going to rain?" Saiki asked, confused. It was weird to use his normal voice. Saiki had decided to wear his geranium ring today, though, so telepathy was out of the question. His family assumed that, without his telepathy, his vocal cords were likely too unused to be used properly. But one of the benefits of being a psychic was his extraordinary physical health. He could talk just fine, he just chose to let them believe he couldn't. "You don't seem to be that fond of crowds. Anyone could see that. I thought there were going to be fewer people out," Satou replied, and Saiki felt the hint of a smile on his face. This was about the nicest thing anyone has ever done for him. Satou led him to a cafe. Saiki had expected it to be completely normal, until they entered and Saiki felt as if they had just entered a comic book. Perplexed, he stood at the entrance, and Satou laughed. "It's a 2D cafe. They look as if you were in a comic. I find it super funny." Satou was right about that. The entire cafe was black and white, even the chairs and tables, and they looked just like those in a shoujo anime might. Saiki found it amusing, although he had to check 3 times to make sure his chair actually existed before sitting down. Satou extended his hand and Saiki looked at him, confused, before deciding to shake his head. He made Satou laugh. "No, I just wanted to hang up your jacket for you." They ordered a meal and Satou began talking about this and that. He repeatedly asked Saiki questions on his own. Usually Saiki would have ignored him until he got the hint, but that wasn't the issue here. Satou knew that he didn't like to talk. He still asked him questions to include him in the conversation. Aside from that, Saiki would have felt bad about not talking to the boy when he was the one inviting him. Some of Saiki's answers must have been incredibly boring, but Satou didn't comment. "Oh, could I ask the waitress to take a photo of us?" Satou asked after they had finished eating. "I want to show this to my other friends." Other friends. As in Saiki was Satou's friend. Saiki was happy enough by that to agree without thinking about how Satou didn't necessarily need him in the picture to share it with others. After the picture was taken, they spent the rest of the afternoon wandering around. The rain had cleared up, and they visited a bookstore. Saiki found himself giving somewhat longer answers as time went on. Conversing with Satou was surprisingly enjoyable. He was exceedingly average, sure, but Saiki was surrounded by weird and extreme people. The normalcy didn't make the conversation boring. He welcomed it. "You know what, Saiki?" Satou asked after they had arrived back home. "You never answered the question. Which superpower would you like to have?" Saiki paused. He didn't like any of his powers. Even if they were useful now and then, he would love to exchange them for a normal life. Was there any power Saiki would rather keep than being normal? He didn't think so. "I don't know." They began meeting up more often. Saiki wasn't sure what drove the other boy to spend time with him, but he was not going to complain. Teruhashi had tried to come up with ways to get them to date, and pestered Saiki about asking the guy out, until Saiki had begun rolling his eyes mentally whenever he saw the girl. "Hi, Saiki-kun. I and Chiyo wanted to meet up today and have a girls' night. Please join us. It would be so fun." Saiki raised his eyebrows. So he counted as a girl now. How interesting. He declined and Teruhashi pouted. The guy standing near them suddenly seemed very interested. How dare he make Teruhashi upset? He could make out, and sighed as the boys began staring at him angrily. He could feel his likability score drop abruptly. "All right," he answered. "I'll come." Teruhashi squealed in delight and looked like she wanted to throw her arms around him. Saiki quickly took a step back. That was enough. The rest of the school day was surprisingly uneventful. Haido asked Saiki to go to a fitness studio after school. Don't be weak, Saiki-kun. You have to be hard on yourself to succeed. Push yourself to your limits. No, what am I saying? Push yourself above your limits. Limits only exist in your head. Don't let them win. Then Hiro had begun to make push-ups with only 3 fingers, and Saiki had quickly turned around to walk away. Some people were too much for him. Nendo and Kaido discussed their favourite video games and got into a fight. They then asked Saiki to be the judge, and he chose the one whose cover did not show a half-naked woman. Disgusting. Kaido stuck his tongue out, delighted by his victory. Yes, the day had been rather normal. In the afternoon he went with Terahashi and Yumehara. After arriving at Yumehara's house, they sat down on her carpet. She bought some cookies, and the 2 girls began talking about all sorts of things Saiki didn't want to listen to. "Why did you invite Saiki-kun, Kokumi?" Yumehara eventually asked before turning red. "Not that I mind him here, I was just curious." Teruhashi thankfully didn't wrongly out him, and went with a diplomatic, "I wanted to paint his fingernails." "Oh, that would look so nice. Which colour would look good on him? Purple?" Teruhashi's eyebrows furrowed. "Maybe pink or black. Which colour do you want, Saiki?" "Oh, right. You would have to go with this, unless you wanted to tell Yumehara he crushed on a guy he most definitely only wanted friendship from." So he shrugged and told them that either option seemed nice. In the end, Yumehara painted his nails purple. "They really bring out your eyes," except for his index finger, which he coloured in soft pink. "It looks really pretty, Saiki," Teruhashi said. A few days later, Sato and he met up again. "I like your nails," he commented upon arrival, and somehow his compliment felt warmer. Satou Hiroshi was a calm lake in the evening light. He was a gentle dance in the star-stricken night, a gentle breeze that ruffled his hair, a lake frozen over. Saiki Kusuo himself was chaos. He yearned for peace and was left longing. He wore a facade of apathy because he couldn't get hurt if he didn't care to begin with. And he wasn't stupid enough to think he wouldn't get hurt. Of course he would. Every day Saiki heard the voices of thousands of guilty souls recounting the innermost nightmares. He was left to listen forcibly, as much as he wanted to put his hands above his ears and tune it out. Today had been especially bad. Someone had died today, and Saiki had witnessed it all, unable to stop it. He needed an escape called Satou Hiroshi. It was already night, but Saiki had an idea. It was foolish, and he was undoubtedly come to regret it, but he didn't care, not right now. So Saiki phoned Sato, who surprisingly answered. "Saiki, you woke me up," he replied in a hoarse voice. "Open your window, please." Sato did, and Saiki stood in front of it, his head tilted with a smirk. Sato's eyes widened. "Remember when you said you wanted to fly? I do too. Do you want to fly together?" He extended his hand and Sato grabbed it, looking nervous. "Don't worry, this is a dream. You won't fall unless you want to," Saiki explained, and Sato nodded in affirmation. Saiki showed Sato the city from above the sky, far enough in the air that Saiki felt as if there were no people but the 2 of them. His ring blocked Sato's thoughts still. He had begun to wear it around the other boy regularly. Somehow he felt as if it were intruding on his privacy, even though he's never cared before. Sato was absolutely fascinated. "Flying is beautiful," he whispered, almost too quietly for Saiki to hear. "You know what, though, Saiki? I don't feel like this is a dream at all." Saiki had ended up coming clean. He had told Sato all about his psychic abilities. Worst case scenario, he time-travelled and made sure it never happened. Sato had been incredibly understanding, for whatever reason. "I knew that there was something different about you. That's what made you seem intriguing to me. I'm pretty normal, so it must seem super boring to you." He scratched the back of his head, and Saiki wanted to yell at him that it wasn't true, that Sato drew him in, and that they were equally fascinated by one another, but he couldn't quite bring himself to. Sato seemed to understand him either way. Previously, when Saiki opened up about being a psychic, people's behaviour towards him changed. They tried to think certain things or become unsure in his presence. Sato had no such intentions. "Why would I want to change the way I think now? You already know all about it, even if you wear your telepathy ring now." Sato's behaviour did change, but not in the way Saiki had been expecting it to. Sato had noticed Saiki's tendency to get jumpy whenever he was wearing his ring. He began initiating more physical contact, lightly grabbing his wrist in order to drag him to places when Saiki was overwhelmed with the mental stimulation, resting a hand on his back when they went somewhere and Saiki was unsure of what was happening behind him, whispering comments about people who were about to approach him, so Saiki would grow to expect it. Satou was incredibly nice about it, and Saiki couldn't help but relish in the attention. Every now and then, Saiki would teleport them to a different place in the world, where they would go out and have fun, or secretly heal Satou when the boy was about to get sick. It was nice. Teruhashi somehow thought she had succeeded in bringing them together, and now officially declared herself to be Cupid's assistant. It was annoying, but at least she was busy trying to bring other couples together. She had begun working with Ayuda. Ayuda told her who in the school was meant to be, and they would figure out ways to make it happen. This evening, Satou and he were sitting next to each other on a playground. It was a late evening, and most people had gone to sleep. Only a few lights were still on. Saiki noted that Satou should have gone to bed by now, too, seeing as it would be the average time. But he didn't voice his thoughts. He didn't want Satou to go yet. Satou had just finished drinking his peach tea and set the empty cup down. "Empathy," Saiki suddenly said, and Satou turned his head to face him. "What?" "My superpower. I would want to be empathetic." He hesitated for a second, before adding, "I always know what everyone is feeling, but I don't really understand it. I sometimes think I'm not all that capable of feeling human emotions at all." Satou didn't answer for a while. "I believe that would be a nice power to have, but for the record, I don't doubt that you feel. I actually think you feel quite a bit. You just prefer to pretend that you don't." Saiki thought his words over. Satou lay his hand on Saiki's and sighed. "I think that you often just aren't sure of your exact emotions." Saiki looked down at their hands. Satou had painted his nails today too, in a simple black. He felt a little guilty for pushing Satou away from the norm. He felt even worse for liking this version even better. After all, Saiki was supposed to want the ordinary. "The funny thing is that I believe that you are unaware of how you feel when it's so obvious to me." Saiki blinked. "Then tell me." Satou smiled and shook his head. "This isn't up to me. I can only tell you what I feel. Anything else would be wrong." Saiki didn't understand what Satou was talking about. "Then tell me how you feel," he asked, and Satou nodded. "That I can do." He let Saiki's hand go and moved it towards Saiki's neck. What, was he going to attack him or something? Instead, Satou leaned his entire body towards Saiki. Oh, he was going to give him a hug. Yeah, that made more sense. Instead, Saiki felt Satou's lips against his own, and just for a brief moment, he felt Satou's breath hot against his skin. Then the boy had already pulled back. Saiki blinked a couple of times before collecting himself. "Oh," he said. Satou smiled at him. "I know that you think that I'm the perfect norm, but in some aspects I'm not. I'm alright with that." "I am too," Saiki answered. After a moment of hesitation, he leaned forward to be kissed by the boy once more. Hello. Thank you again to my sister who drew the art. You can find her on Instagram at elodie.s_art_. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!